The story begins as the Silver Wing Hero Party fights against a massive dragon, which blows them away with its tail. It attacks them with its ice breath, and they try to block it with their barriers, but it breaks through and hits one of them. So the party's cook named Dennis creates a potion with his magic and heals the girl's wounds. Their captain Vigo uses his magic to slash the dragon's eye, causing it to become enraged, and it starts attacking with lightning. But the vice captain Katie cuts it down with her sword, and Vigo tells everyone not to falter since they're the strongest party in the world. After that, we see the Silver Wing Party having an emergency meeting where we learn that they failed to defeat the dragon, and Vigo blames Dennis for what happened. He notes that if Dennis didn't use his dread voice skill, the dragon wouldn't have escaped, but he reminds Vigo that he was the one who ordered him to use it. Dennis knows that their goal was to eliminate the dragon, but when it started going crazy, Vigo told him to use the skill since they couldn't handle it anymore. Vigo claims that he never gave Dennis such an order and suggests that he's a spy from another party who was sent to destroy their reputation. He casts Dennis out, telling him he was never worthy to be in their party since he's just a cook, so he becomes angry and prepares to fight. Vigo unleashes his powers and notes that even though they're both level 99, a cook like Dennis can never defeat him. Dennis calms himself down, and he decides to leave peacefully, telling Vigo to do whatever he likes since it doesn't concern him anymore. As Dennis is walking in the royal capital, he runs into a little girl who accidentally lets go of her balloon. So he jumps up and grabs it for her, and seeing her happy makes him realize he shouldn't let go of the things important to him. He decides to leave the capital, and Katie tries to stop him since he's a huge asset to their party, but he assures her that someone else will replace him. She mentions that ever since he joined them, they've been able to go further into the dungeons, which is why people call them the strongest party. She thinks he's the reason why their party is doing well, since he supports the rear guard, but the other members don't know anything about it. She starts to lose her mind, since she knows that they can't survive without him, so she tries to make him stay, but he's already made up his mind. She tells him to at least make dinner before he leaves, and she wonders what he plans to do, so he reveals that he'll open his own restaurant. He thinks about how they both got along, but Vigo is jealous since he's interested in her, and she reminds him that she was the one who invited him to the party. He continues to walk away, and she orders him to stop as the vice captain, but he just tells her to take care of herself. After that, he goes to a new city, where he's surprised to see a magic item called an icebox, and he's about to buy it. But he recalls that the guidebook on opening a restaurant mentioned that it's wise to keep the initial investments as low as possible, so he decides to leave the item. He follows every advice written in the book, and after buying everything he needs, the only thing left is to hire a server. He sees a girl named Italia, who's being sold by a slave trader, and he mentions that she's the daughter of a fallen noble. Dennis wishes that he could do something for her, but he knows he can't save everyone, so he thinks about leaving. But after seeing the look in her eyes, he remembers his past, so he decides to bid for her. But the merchant named Polvo offers more than him, but he hears people mentioning that the man is a pervert. So they get in a bidding war, and Dennis manages to buy her, but it costs him almost all the money he had left. He takes her to a shop to get cleaned up, and as they're walking in the city, he tells her to stay close, but she ends up getting lost. She's scared seeing the people around her, but he manages to find her, and he apologizes for walking too fast. She asks him why he bought her, so he mentions that it's because she reminds him of something from his past, and he tells her she's free, so it's up to her if she wants to stay with him. He hears her stomach growling, so he cooks a meal for her, and as she takes a bite, she's shocked by how delicious it is. She starts to cry, and he thinks about the things she must have gone through, but he won't ask her anything until she's ready to tell him on her own. He thinks that even if someone loses all hope, they still need to eat, and he asks her if she likes the food, but he sees that she's about to choke. The next day, they work together to get the restaurant ready, and Dennis tells Italia that she'll be the poster girl of their shop. He's excited to serve his first customer, but they're surprised when they see a girl named Henrietta, who comes in fully armored. Dennis recalls how the book mentioned that there will be customers who don't like to be bothered, so he needs to make them feel welcomed. He tells Italia to get a glass of water, while Henrietta decides what to order, but she's nervous since he's standing over her head. She orders a small meal, which makes him realize that she doesn't have money, so he decides to make her a proper meal for free. She reveals that she was kicked out of her party for being a woman, which annoys her since gender has nothing to do with skill, and she mentions how the vice captain of the Silver Wing is also a girl. She reveals that it's the reason why she's hiding her identity, but no party wants to hire her after hearing her voice, which explains why she's broke. Dennis gives her the meal, and as she takes a bite, she's shocked by how delicious it is. She instantly finishes everything, and he tells her to become a regular customer, so she promises to return after she joins a party and earns enough money. He offers to ask his customers if they know a party that wants to hire a girl, but he mentions that it will be difficult to contact her, so he tells her to stop by from time to time. After that, customers start visiting the restaurant, and they're all impressed by how delicious the food is. Dennis hears a group of people talking about going into a dungeon, so he asks them if they're willing to hire a female swordsman, and they tell him they have no problem with it. Later that day, he tells Henrietta about the party, and she's excited to join them, but he thinks she should be cautious about choosing a party. She thinks she won't be able to do anything if she worries too much, and as she's eating the food, she promises to pay him back, but he tells her not to speak when her mouth is full. At night, Dennis hears two customers talking about a party that recruits female adventurers, and they take the girls into the dungeons to assault them, which makes him worried about Henrietta. The next day, Henrietta meets up at the party, and she asks them what they'll be doing today, so they mention that they'll talk about it when they get to the dungeon. She wants to know about the quest they're working on, but she decides to just go along with them, since she doesn't want to make the situation awkward. In the dungeon, they praise Henrietta as she easily defeats the monsters, which makes her happy, since it's the first time a party has relied on her. She thinks about how everyone always acts weird around her since she's a woman, but she believes it will be different with her current party members, since they seem to have faith in her. As they keep moving forward, she continues to defeat the monsters in their way, but she eventually gets tired and falls to her knees. She asks them how much further they need to go, since they told her it's a simple gathering job, so they assure her that their destination is right ahead. They reach the memory crystals, and she falls since she's completely exhausted, so their leader tells one of the members to cast a healing spell on her. He gets close to her, but he uses a stun spell to paralyze her, and she tries to grab her sword, but the leader stops her and calls her an idiot for believing everything they said. They tell her they'll leave her there after she entertains them for an hour, and they remove her armor, but Dennis suddenly blows one of them away. But they can't recognize him since he's covering his face, and they think he must be a monster. One of them tries to use search magic to find out his weakness, but it doesn't work since his level is too high, and he sends one of them flying into a wall. So everyone freaks out, and they try to escape, but he attacks them with his knife, while Henrietta notes that he moves like a skilled chef. The next day, Henrietta tells Dennis about what happened, and she notes that she passed out, so she wasn't able to thank her savior. The party members were found tied up in front of the dungeon, and after the guild looked into them, it was revealed that they were a criminal party. She mentions how Dennis was right when he told her to be cautious, and he blames himself for not doing his research about the party, but she tells him it isn't his fault. She's embarrassed when her stomach starts growling, but she doesn't have money, so he tells her to eat whatever she likes. She orders the most expensive item, but she apologizes and tells him to give her the cheapest meal, so he notes that once she's ordered something, she needs to eat it. He tells Atelia to have dinner as well, and two customers come in, but he tells them to get a glass of water for themselves since Atelia is busy. While Atelia and Henrietta enjoy their meal, the customers ask Dennis why he didn't open the restaurant yesterday, so he notes that he had to take care of something, which makes Henrietta realize that he was the one who saved her. The next day, Henrietta asks Dennis if she should hide being a girl if she plans to continue being an adventurer, but he just tells her to do whatever she wants. She suddenly rushes to the back, where she removes her armor and puts on normal clothes, since she realizes that she's too worried about what other people think. She tells Dennis that his words really resonated with her, but he mentions that she's eating every meal there for free, so he asks her if she's looking for a new party. She notes that things aren't going smoothly, so he tells her to find a new job quickly, so that she can pay off her tab, and she's shocked that he's keeping a record of everything she eats. A boy named Vin comes into the restaurant, but he has a hard time deciding what to eat. They try to help him out, but he rejects all their suggestions, which annoys Dennis. Atelia tells him to order the fried rice, so he decides to go with her suggestion, and as he takes a bite, he's amazed by how good it tastes. Dennis asks him what's wrong, since he thinks Vin is looking for someone to listen to him, so he mentions that everyone's level around him is too low. He's annoyed that everyone's just thinking about completing their quests, and they have no motivation to grow their party, so Dennis tells Henrietta to learn from him, since she isn't even earning money. Vin notes that he can't allow unmotivated people to be adventurers, since a true adventurer explores unknown lands, and Dennis agrees with him. He mentions that when he said the same things to his party members, they kicked him out, but he thinks it's okay, since he didn't want to be with a party that doesn't have high goals. He reveals that he plans to get into the Silver Wing and become their greatest wizard, but Dennis tells him to make sure he doesn't end up alone, since parties are important to adventurers. So he notes that he'll join a party if he finds people who can keep up with him, and he pays for his meal, telling Dennis he liked the food. The next day, Vin comes back and tells Dennis he has joined the strongest party in the area, which is known as the Night Mist Troop. Dennis wonders if their levels match, and Vin mentions that it doesn't matter since he has a lot of advanced skills, so all he needs to do is put them into practice. He wonders if he'll get a cool name if he becomes a member of the Silver Wing, and Dennis thinks that even though Vin is full of himself, it isn't a bad thing that he wants to improve. So he believes that if a party trains him well, he'll become a strong adventurer in the future. Vin mentions that he'll go to the 5th floor for a quest, so Dennis uses search magic to check his stats, and realizes that he's level 17, which is too low to go to the 5th floor. Dennis asks him if it isn't too deep for him, but he explains that he isn't worried, since the elite members of their party will support him. Dennis thinks Vin has just read about the advanced skills and doesn't know how to use them, since a person's level depends on the quantity and quality of skills they have. So if he really knew such advanced techniques, his level wouldn't be that low. Dennis keeps trying to warn him against going to the 5th floor, but Vin tells him he doesn't know how the adventurer world works since he's never been to the dungeon. After that, Dennis and Natalia go to buy stuff for the restaurant, and he's still worried about Vin, but he knows that Vin needs to learn personal responsibility. He overhears two people talking about how they just left Vin on the 5th floor to see if he can make it back alive, so Dennis grabs them and beats them up. Meanwhile, Vin is running away from a group of monsters, but his foot gets stuck in a vine, and he tries to use a spell to break it, but his mind goes blank. He doesn't understand why he can't remember anything, and he starts to imagine the things that will happen to him if the monsters find him, so he starts to panic. But a girl named Cynthia uses her spell to save him, and he thanks her for her help, but she tells him not to get too comfortable, since they still need to find a way to escape. He asks her if she got lost and ended up there, but she reveals that her party also left her behind, and she mentions how she always causes problems for others, since she isn't good at anything. So she thinks she deserves to be abandoned, but she's embarrassed since she knows that he has nothing to do with it. She notes that they'll just wait for his party to come save him, but he tells her he's just like her, since no one is coming for him. He thinks it's because of his terrible personality, and she mentions that it isn't true, but he tells her she doesn't know anything about him. He notes that it's the first time he's opened up to a stranger, which has made him feel a little bit better, and he tells her he has a plan, saying he'll act as a decoy for her to escape. She tells him he might die, but he mentions that he has lived all his life selfishly, and he wants to make sure she survives since she saved his life. He jumps out in front of the goblins, and tries to use a spell to stop them, but they easily break through it. They're about to reach him, but Dennis uses his alchemy to create a giant pot that blocks the goblins, and we see that he's still covering his face, so Vin thinks he's a monster. He starts attacking Dennis, who removes his mask to calm him down, and he hits Vin for jumping in front of the goblins without a plan. As they prepare to leave, he stops to look for Cynthia, but he's shocked since there's only her skeleton there. After they get out of the dungeon, they go to find out more about Cynthia, and the Adventurers Guild notes that she went missing 13 years ago. They make a grave for her, and Dennis mentions that he's heard how adventurers who die in the dungeon become spirits that save other adventurers. Vin thanks her for saving him, and he starts to cry on her grave, promising to become a powerful wizard so that he can save girls like her. Dennis invites him to eat at his restaurant, and he tells Vin to cheer up, or Cynthia won't rest in peace. He suddenly feels something, and he thinks about how in the past, people called everything they couldn't explain magic, and he sees Cynthia's ghost, thinking she must have been a true wizard. We see a girl named Rachel, who's working in the night mist troupe, and one of her seniors asks her when the reports will be ready. She apologizes since she hasn't finished her task yet, telling him that the number of completion rewards isn't adding up, so he tells her to keep working. She finally manages to complete the reports at night, and she's annoyed since the reason it took so long was because her senior had put the wrong numbers in. She's extremely tired, but she needs to get up early in the morning because of a quest, and even though she hasn't eaten yet, it's too late to get anything since all the restaurants are closed. She decides to go to Dennis's restaurant with the hope that it will be open, but she's disappointed since they're closing up right in front of her, and she prepares to leave. But Atalia invites her inside, and asks Dennis to serve her, which surprises them since she never requests anything. As Rachel puts in her order, she sees how openly the rest of them are talking to each other, which makes her think about how she spends most of her holidays in bed, so she wonders if she should try to make friends as well. Dennis serves her the food, and as she takes a bite, she notes that it's the best thing she's eaten in her life. Henrietta starts telling her about all the dishes, but Dennis reminds her to get a job so she can pay back what she owes. Rachel starts laughing after seeing them argue, but she suddenly starts to cry as she thinks about how boring her life is. She remembers how the people in her hometown saved money to send her there, and she wanted to make enough money to pay them back, but she can't stand how sad her life has gotten. After Rachel leaves, everyone wonders if they can do anything to help her, but Dennis notes that he can only feed her since he's a cook, so she needs to do something about her life on her own. The next day, Rachel wakes up late, and she apologizes to everyone who was waiting for her. They head to the dungeon, where one of her seniors struggles to take down a monster, so she uses wind magic to save him. But instead of thanking her, he knocks her to the ground, since he thinks she embarrassed him, and he tells her they're better off without her. After that, Vin and Henrietta see Rachel walking in the city, and they decide to follow her, but she ends up going to a tower, so they realize that she's planning to take her own life. She jumps off since she thinks there's nothing left to live for, but Henrietta jumps after her, while Vin summons a magic palm to cushion their landing. At the restaurant, Dennis is shocked to see Atelia walking around naked, so she mentions that it's because there were no towels. He quickly gets her a towel, and Vin arrives with the others, but he's embarrassed seeing what's going on. Dennis notes that it isn't something he should worry about, and he tells Atelia to put on her clothes, but she tells him she needs to dry her body with a towel first. Dennis notices that Rachel is with them as well, and after they tell him everything, he mentions that the more earnest a person is, the more work they will take on. He thinks all they can do is let her rest, but Vin doesn't think it's possible, since she works for the Night Mist Troop, so Dennis notes that he'll talk to them. The leader of the Night Mist Troop, named Hopper, arrives at the restaurant, and he apologizes since Dennis had to take care of Rachel. Dennis uses search magic and sees that Hopper is level 51, which impresses him, since it's much higher compared to an average adventurer. He tells Hopper that Rachel is resting at the moment, and notes that she'll leave their party to get treatment, but Hopper shows him the contract they have with her. Dennis can't believe she signed something so terrible, and he calls them a gang of swindlers, since they plan to squeeze out everything from her. Meanwhile, Rachel thinks she's better off dead, and Atelia tells her she also thought about taking her own life, but Dennis pulled her out of the darkness. She notes that Rachel should eat something delicious, and if she still plans to take her own life, Atelia will accept her decision. Hopper asks Dennis one last time to hand Rachel over, and he doesn't understand why Hopper thinks he's an important person. So he explains that in every dungeon town, the strongest party holds the real power, and notes that the Silver Wing is the best example of it. He threatens to burn the restaurant if Dennis doesn't do what he's told, but Katie suddenly appears, and Dennis tells her he's dealing with something important at the moment. She's annoyed hearing this, since she came such a long way to meet him, and Hopper recognizes her as the vice commander of the Silver Wing. Dennis tells her to wait while he deals with the situation, and he tries to negotiate with Hopper, but they're distracted when Katie hugs Vin, thinking he's a girl. But Dennis mentions he's a guy, and Vin wonders what her relationship is with Dennis, so she reveals that he's a former member of the Silver Wing. She notes that they were basically partners, which shocks everyone, and Hopper realizes that he shouldn't make an enemy of Dennis, so he burns the contract and allows Rachel to leave the party. Katie is angry that he tried to mess with Dennis, so she asks him if he wants her to ruin Hopper's life in the kingdom, but he tells her to stop acting cocky. He asks her what she wants to eat, while Atelia comes out with Rachel and tells him to serve her as well. They both order the same dish, and Rachel notes that it tastes amazing, while Atelia is happy that she's enjoying the food. Katie invites Dennis to return to the Silver Wing, because ever since he left, the party has been on the verge of destruction. She mentions that he was the backbone of their rear guard, so everyone who depended on him has been against Vigo, but he refuses to go back, telling her he's enjoying his life. He notes that most of his regular customers are idiots, but he prefers to be with them instead of returning to a stressful party. Katie returns to the royal capital, where she runs into Vigo, who asks her why she went to see Dennis, so she mentions that she missed his cooking. She tries to convince him to bring Dennis back, but he refuses her request and orders her to stay away from him. Meanwhile, we see that the restaurant is filled with customers, while Rachel starts helping Dennis since she's living there. Vin tells her to rest for a while, but she notes that she can't keep still unless she's working, and she notes that Atelia is also helping her. Dennis gives them their order, and Henrietta isn't surprised that the restaurant is getting more regular customers. But he once again reminds her that she's a freeloader, and everyone's surprised that she still hasn't paid off her tab, so she tells him she's having a hard time finding a job. Vin wonders if Dennis can handle such a large number of orders, and he mentions how Atelia has also been looking happier, so Rachel wonders if something good happened. Dennis suddenly drops his pot, and he tells Vin to come there on his day off, since he needs his advice on something. Henrietta also offers to help, but he notes that she can't handle it, so she wonders what kind of advice he wants. At night, as Henrietta takes a shower, she keeps thinking about what Dennis said to her, and she thinks he'll ask for Vin's advice on how to ban her. Meanwhile, Dennis tells Vin that he thinks Atelia has a boyfriend, and he realizes that it's what Dennis wanted to get his advice on. He notes that ever since he started giving her pocket money, she's been going on a lot of walks, so he decided to follow her, and he saw her with a boy. Vin mentions that they might just be friends, and if Dennis is that worried about it, he should just ask her directly, but he doesn't have the courage to do that. He becomes angry and notes that if she really has a boyfriend, he should have come to see him first with a box of snacks, and he refuses to accept anyone who isn't at least level 80. Atalia asks them what they're talking about, which startles Dennis, and Vin mentions that he's asking Dennis about cooking, so she notes that she also wants to learn how to cook. He starts teaching both of them, but Vin is surprised that he's giving her more attention, and Dennis recalls the time he learned how to cook. As they finish making the dish, he's impressed by Atalia, but he doesn't even look at what Vin has prepared. Atalia suddenly goes outside, and as Rachel wakes up, Dennis gives her a shopping list, while he and Vin go after Atalia. But Rachel doesn't think she can shop on her own, so as Henrietta enters the restaurant, he tells her to go with Rachel. As they're spying on Atalia, Vin tries to convince Dennis to stop, but he notes that it's okay since he's her guardian. He shows Vin the boy that she's been hanging out with, and he's angry that the boy is trying to win her over, but Vin thinks it's great that she's making new friends. The boy takes her to a jeweler, and Dennis starts to lose his mind, thinking they might be getting a wedding ring, so Vin tells him to calm down. We see Henrietta and Rachel as they go shopping, and Rachel notices that something's wrong with Henrietta, who mentions that she's thinking about how to pay back Dennis. Rachel doesn't understand why she doesn't have money even though she goes on quests, so Henrietta notes that she spends all the money she earns on her equipment and potions. She usually ends up spending more than she makes, and she wishes there was another way to show her support for Dennis, so Rachel tells her it's the thought that counts. Meanwhile, Vin uses magic on a megaphone to hear what's happening inside the building, but Dennis can't believe his ears when he hears Atalia telling the boy that she's glad she met him. A man suddenly steals the purse of an old woman, so Dennis runs after him while carrying Vin, and the thief is shocked by how fast he can run without using magic. He jumps onto a roof using wind magic, but Dennis keeps following him, while Vin uses his palm magic to launch them high into the air. They manage to get close to the thief, but he pushes them back with his magic, and thinks they won't be able to catch him. But Dennis keeps running after him, and they see the thief running towards Henrietta and Rachel, so Dennis tells them to stop him. Henrietta attacks the thief with her sword and manages to catch him, so Dennis praises her, and she's glad that she was able to help him. At night, Dennis tells them about Atalia's boyfriend, but Vin mentions that they aren't sure about it. He notes that it's the reason why Dennis has been feeling agitated lately, which puts Henrietta at peace, and Rachel notes that Henrietta thought he was planning to ban her from the restaurant. He mentions that she always looks happy while eating his food, so he can never ban her, but he tells her she still needs to pay off her tab. Atalia arrives and gives Dennis a bracelet, revealing that she saved her pocket money and got help from a boy who worked at the jeweler's shop to make it. They realize he wasn't her boyfriend, and Henrietta is about to tell her what Dennis was thinking, but he threatens to ban her if she doesn't stop. Atalia tells him to try it on, so he puts it on his arm, and she tells him it looks nice on him. A butler named Stevens comes to the restaurant and starts crying after seeing Atalia, so Henrietta wonders if he has a thing for little girls, but Vin tells her not to make such assumptions. Stevens calls Atalia by her full name, which shocks Rachel and Vin, as they realize that she's a member of the House Workstadt, which is the greatest wizard family in all the kingdom. Stevens reveals that he came to retrieve her on the order of the Court of Justice, but Dennis doesn't understand why they're after her. So Stevens reveals that Atalia's late father had a brother named Joseph, who stole her inheritance and cast her out of the family, on the rumor that she doesn't have Workstadt blood. But he reveals that they found her father's will, which mentions that he left everything to her, and the royal government has recognized it, so the court has called for her to confirm if she's a Workstadt. She refuses to go with him, but Dennis tells her there will come a time when she will need to deal with the situation, so she agrees to go if Dennis comes with her. As they prepare to leave, Vin decides to tag along, and everyone's amazed by how beautiful Atalia looks. She notes that they should quickly solve the matter and come back, since she never wants to return to the royal capital again, and Dennis assures her that nothing will go wrong as long as he's with her. As they reach the royal capital, Vin is excited to see a restaurant that is known to have the best food in the entire kingdom, and Dennis considers going there, but he thinks the owner won't be happy to see him. They meet with a man named Sestovich, who has been assigned to their case, and he mentions that the court needs to inspect Atalia's blood. So Stevens takes out a needle, but she freaks out since she's afraid of it, and she collapses after he gets her blood. Dennis asks Sestovich to explain the situation, so he notes that Atalia's father named Famas was a user of hypnosis magic, and we learn that only members of the Workstadt family can use it. He mentions that Famas was a great man who saved a lot of people, but Joseph had both him and his wife eliminated to get control of everything. Sestovich shows them a magic item, which will be used to determine the validity of Atalia's lineage, and he puts a drop of Atalia's and Famas's blood in it. It makes a flower-like structure, which means she really is his daughter, and he repeats the process using her mother's blood. The result is the same, so Sestovich notes that they can win the case. They go to the Royal Court of Justice, where Joseph calls Dennis a coward who was kicked out of the Silver Wing, but Dennis tells him it will cost him a lot of money to settle the dispute. One of them tells the judge that Atelia is the daughter of Famaz and his commoner mistress, so she isn't worthy to lead the family, but Sestovich notes that it's what the trial is for. They prepare to take Atelia's blood, but she becomes scared once again after seeing the needle, so Dennis calms her down. They decide to draw lots to see who will activate the magic item, and Stevens ends up getting selected, so he performs the test with Famaz and Atelia's blood. The result confirms that she's his daughter, but when the process is repeated with his wife Eliza's blood, it fails the test. Sestovich thinks something's wrong, so he demands another test, but Joseph tells him that no matter what he does, the result will be the same, since Atelia is Famaz's daughter with his mistress. The judge notes that since she's at least Famaz's daughter, she'll inherit his knowledge and books, while Joseph will get the wealth and power. But Dennis notices something wrong with Stevens, so Dennis grabs him, and he realizes that Stevens used his blood to rig the test. He reveals that he did it since Joseph offered to reinstate him as a butler, and the judge tells Dennis to stop, but he's angry since he knows everything was set up by Joseph. He shows them the lots they picked, revealing that there was never a marked one in the box, since Stevens was already chosen to do the job. Joseph orders the knights to stop him, and he prepares to destroy all of them, but Vin calms him down, telling him to think about what would happen to Atelia if something happened to him. After that, Dennis realizes that it was a mistake bringing Atelia there, and Sestovich notes that they should at least check out the books. So they go to an old building, but he mentions that it has turned into a storage house that no one uses. Atelia ends up falling into a hidden room, and as Vin and Sestovich look around, they can't believe the number of rare books present there. Vin starts losing his mind, since the whole history of mankind and wizardry is right before his eyes, but Sestovich thinks they should get someone to appraise everything. He wonders if Famaz's goal was to leave Atelia with the books, and Dennis asks her what she wants to do with her treasure, so she notes they should take it to the restaurant for everyone to read. The next day, Vin runs into a man who looks like Dennis named Heath, but Vin feels like he's a completely different person compared to Dennis. We see that the restaurant is filled with customers again, and most of them are wizards and sages, who are interested in the books Atelia inherited. They can't believe how rare it all is, but Dennis yells at them to leave after they finish eating, since they aren't at a library. One of them notes that he can cure his wife's illness using one of the books, so he asks for permission to borrow it, and Atelia lets him take it with him. So the rest of the customers also start asking if they can borrow the books, but Dennis tells them it was a special case. After that, Dennis starts using all of his skills to cook, and Vin wonders if it's okay to put too much pressure on him, but he notes that he won't be done with the orders if he doesn't work hard. We go back to when Dennis was a kid, and as he's sitting in the rain on a street, he sees a woman named Jean, who drops her purse, so he gives it back to her. She takes him to a restaurant, where she's the head chef, and she treats him to a meal for helping her. As he starts eating it, he cries as he realizes how delicious it is, so she calms him down. In the present, Dennis passes out due to exhaustion, and as he wakes up, he sees everyone standing beside him, since they were worried about him. He tries to get up, but they tell him to rest for a while, revealing that they've closed the restaurant, and they mention that Atelia was worried that he might have a serious illness. But he assures her that he's fine, and after he falls asleep, they decide to let him rest, but Atelia refuses to leave him alone. Vin wonders if they can do anything to help Dennis, and Henrietta proposes that they should make something for him to eat, so they go to the kitchen. Vin is surprised when she puts on her full-body knight armor before they start cooking, and she takes out a huge piece of meat to cook for Dennis, but Vin knows that she's thinking about eating it herself. She picks up a knife and prepares to cut the meat, but Vin stops her, since it looks like she's about to slash the whole kitchen, and they start fighting, but Sestovich comes into the restaurant. Meanwhile, Atelia thinks it's her fault Dennis is tired, since he took her to the royal capital, but she's still glad he was with her. We go back to when Jean took Dennis into a restaurant, but the other chefs are annoyed since he keeps playing pranks on them. They tell her to scold him, since they think she spoils him too much, but she believes that he isn't the kind of person who will respond to scolding. After that, Dennis makes fried rice after seeing the chefs, but when he makes a customer try it, he's shocked since she finds it repulsive. He doesn't understand what he did wrong, so Jean comes out and uses her skill to make the dish delicious, which surprises the customer. Dennis apologizes for using a weird skill on the food and starts to cry, but Jean is glad that he at least knows the importance of using skills while cooking. He wonders how she knew what he did wrong, so she mentions that it was extremely easy for her, since she's known for her legendary fried rice, and she tells him he can become just like her. In the present, Sestovich notes that he came to read one of the books Atelia inherited, but he realizes that they need to take care of Dennis first. Sestovich mentions that they should make rice for him using magic, and they all agree with him, but they don't know what kind of magic to use. They start arguing with each other, but Henrietta is completely lost, since she has no clue what they're talking about, so she steps away from them. After a while, they decide to use the phantom fire and flame magic to cook the rice, but since both spells have different heat levels, they'll use a pot imbued with magic crystals to stabilize heat conduction. Sestovich wonders how they will turn the rice into okayu, but Rachel thinks they should take a break first, and Vin notes that his head is about to overheat. Polvo arrives and offers to sell his products for half the price, since he knows that Dennis is sick, and Henrietta notices a rice cooking item. He notes that it can be used to make okayu, and explains how easy it is to make the dish, so Vin and the others feel like idiots, and they decide to buy the magic item. As they start cooking, Atalia comes out and mentions that they should add eggs to it as well, and she starts beating the eggs, which impresses the others. Vin notes that she learned it from Dennis, and they ask Henrietta if there's something she doesn't like to eat, so she mentions that she can't eat leather shoes, which confuses everyone. Vin notes that it isn't something people eat, but she reveals that her father told her they're made from animal hides, so they must be edible. At night, Atalia serves the dish to Dennis, who finds it delicious, and he asks her if she made it, so she reveals that she prepared the eggs. But she notes that Polvo made the okayu, and Dennis can't believe he helped her make the dish. As Henrietta is walking through the city, she runs into Vin, who notices that she's carrying a huge bag, so she notes that she's excited for the feast. A shopkeeper wonders why they aren't at Dennis's restaurant during lunchtime, so they explain that it's closed since it's a special day. They reach the restaurant, where Henrietta checks if they have the required items, and they go to a bathhouse before the feast. As they're about to take a bath, Vin is shocked to see Dennis's muscles, but he asks Vin why he's so skinny, so he explains that he doesn't need muscles since he's a wizard. Meanwhile, Rachel is surprised to see how perfect Henrietta's figure is, but she thinks they both have the same body. After taking a bath, they get together to have dinner, and Dennis tells Henrietta to start it off, so she begins by giving a long speech. Dennis tells her she's too stiff, and she starts to cry, telling everyone they've been taking care of her for a while, but she's finally found a job as a knight. Everyone's happy for her, and she explains that she thought about it for a long time, and she realized that she wanted a job where she could help other people. Vin reveals that he also found his next party, and Henrietta notes that they're both finally doing something, but he tells her they aren't the same, since he was at least paying for his meals. Rachel also tells everyone that she's going back to her home, and notes that after spending a little time with her parents, she'll go to the capital to become a magic school instructor. Dennis notes that she was invited to teach before she even graduated, and he tells them to celebrate their new beginnings, but Vin is sad that everyone's leaving, so they offer to delay their plans. But Dennis calls them idiots, and tells them they're free to do what they want, so they should never let go of what's important to them. After that, Dennis starts preparing fried rice for them, and they're amazed seeing him cook, but Polvo suddenly arrives and begins eating, which surprises all of them. Dennis doesn't even remember his name, but he's glad that at least Atalia hasn't forgotten him, and he tries to recruit her, so Dennis smacks him on the head. He knows that Polvo helped them when he was ill, so Dennis thanks him, but he wonders what Polvo is doing there, so he notes that he wants to treat them to a feast. He shows them his rare meat, so Dennis immediately cuts it up and serves it to all of them, but Polvo notes that he only wanted to treat Atalia. He's jealous seeing her feed Dennis, so she feeds him as well, which makes him so happy that he falls to the ground. Vin asks Dennis if he's connected to the Black's restaurant, because in the courtroom, the judge called him Dennis Black. So he reveals that the head chef who raised him lets him use that name, but he doesn't know if he even wants to use it anymore, since he left after an argument. He mentions that it happened when he was getting close to level 90, but now that he's thinking back on it, he realizes that she was just trying to warn him against being cocky. Vin thinks he has a reason to be confident, since he's level 99, which is almost the highest level he can be. But he mentions that when he left the restaurant, he thought he would reach level 100 in no time. He started traveling all over the world to prove to Jean that he was right, and he ended up at the Silver Wing, but he was never able to reach level 100. Two of Dennis's regulars head to the restaurant, and they can't believe it's closed for the day, but two men suddenly appear and push one of the girls to the ground. So the girls hit one of them with a magic arrow, and the other one tries to run away, so the girls use a spell to catch him, but everyone's shocked as a fire breaks out. Dennis and the others notice smoke coming from the restaurant, so they rush towards it, and they're shocked to see that it's on fire. The girls show them the man who caused the fire, and Vin knows that they're from the Night Mist Troop, but they tell Dennis that the House of Workstead and the Silver Wing are also after him. Dennis and the others manage to put out the fire, but the restaurant is burnt to a crisp, which makes Henrietta cry. Rachel and Vin think it's their fault, since Dennis got involved with the Night Mist Troop because of them. But Dennis tells them not to blame themselves, since he was the one who got into a fight with the House of Workstead in the Silver Wing. He mentions that he'll just open a restaurant in another town, which surprises everyone, and they tell him they must fight their enemies together. But he reminds them that they're up against the strongest party in the greatest noble house in the kingdom, so they don't stand a chance. Vin doesn't understand why he's acting that way, and he asks Dennis what happened to his usual self, so he notes that he's come to his senses. He grabs the money in his safe, and Natalia asks him if he's sure about his decision, so he mentions that they'll just keep getting followed if they pick a fight, and there's no guarantee that everyone will be alright. He apologizes to her since her books were also burned down, but she doesn't care, since all she wished for was for the customers to be happy. He mentions that he likes the town, and Natalia notes that it's better than the capital, so he assures her that they'll come back to visit it once things settle down. As they prepare to leave, Dennis is surprised when he sees the people gathered outside his restaurant, and they all refuse to let him go. Vin knows that Dennis is the kind of person who can't stand seeing someone else get hurt, but he doesn't care when he's the one in trouble. Vin notes that all of them are outcasts who ended up there, and he knows that the same thing happened to Dennis, but he refuses to let Dennis get cast out again, because everyone needs him. He thinks about how pathetic he is, since he always tells everyone they shouldn't let go of the things that are important to them, but he's doing the same thing, so he decides to stay in the town. Henrietta thinks they should give their team a name, so Italia suggests calling themselves the Outcasts Restaurant, and everyone thinks it sounds great. Vin tells Dennis to say something to everyone, so he notes that they'll defeat the villains, and Vin asks him if he has a plan. But before he can say anything, Katie suddenly arrives, and she apologizes since she couldn't stop the men from burning down the restaurant, even though she heard Vigo talking about his plan to do it. Dennis notes that it isn't her fault, and he asks her to tell him about Vigo's movement, but she mentions that she's still the vice captain of the Silver Wing, so she can't help him. He apologizes for asking too much of her, and she's about to leave, but she suddenly changes her mind and decides to tell him everything. After that, as everyone is traveling towards the capital, Dennis reveals that Jean has reached level 100, which shocks everyone. Vin starts losing his mind, since it requires extraordinary talent for someone to even reach level 99, and Dennis tries to calm him down, but he refuses to sit still. He notes that only a few legends in the history of humanity have reached level 100, which means Jean is on their level. But Dennis mentions that she only improved her cooking skills, so she's even weaker than him in combat. He mentions that she still has a lot of connections in the royal capital, so she's the best person to ask for help, but he isn't sure if she would even listen to him. As they reach the capital, Dennis goes to meet Jean, and he tells the others to carry out their plan. Vin goes to a shop, where he tells the receptionist to take care of something for him, and she immediately agrees to do it, since she finds him cute. Rachel tells her group to ask all the wizards and sages in the capital for help, and her companions are worried that they won't listen to them, but she assures them that everything will be fine. Meanwhile, Henrietta meets up with Sestovich to tell him everything that has happened, and she asks him if they can build a criminal case using the arsonists they captured. But he thinks it will be difficult to use them to get to the Silver Wing, so she mentions that they have a plan. We see Polvo yelling at everyone to work hard, and he notices Italia looking at a magic item that uses wind magic, but he promises to fix it since it's broken. The man who borrowed a book from her arrives, and as he returns it, he thanks her since he was able to save his wife, which makes her happy. He asks her if there's anything he can do for her, and he reveals that he's a wizard who can use almost all of the high-level wind magic skills, so they decide to get his help in fixing the magic item. Meanwhile, Dennis reaches the restaurant, but before he can open the door, he thinks about the moment he left after fighting with Jean. As he goes inside, everyone recognizes him, so they gather around him, but he tells them he came to meet Jean. A girl named Sismochi leads him to Jean, but he has no idea how to talk to her, and she notes that the look on his face has improved a little. She wonders if he has found his answer, but he still has no idea about it, which makes him think he'll never reach level 100, and she knows that he's there for something other than visiting his home. So he mentions that Katie told him about a meeting that will be attended by important people, and he needs Jean's connections to find the time and the place of the meetup. Jean is surprised that he always puts others before himself, and she wonders why he's so selfless, so he notes that he's doing everything for the people who like his cooking. She agrees to help him, and she mentions that even though she gave him everything, she didn't teach him the one thing he needs to reach level 100. She gives him a hint about it, but he still doesn't understand what she's trying to say, and she watches him as he leaves. At night, Sesmochi gives Dennis a note from Jean, which tells him the place and time of the meeting, so he notes that their preparations are complete. The next day, as Vigo is about to leave, Katie asks him where he's going, so he tells her he needs to take care of business. He thinks it's a waste of time, but he notes that he can't ignore it, since the place that he's aiming for lies beyond it. We go back to when Vigo was a kid, and we see him working in a field, while his brother just watches him since he's sick. The others feel bad for them, since their father passed away, and their mother abandoned them after she found another man. A noble woman gives him food, telling him to eat it himself, since he always gives it to his little brother. But after they leave, Vigo is glad that his brother was with him, since he makes it easy to trick rich people into giving him food. They go to the noble woman's home, where the dog starts barking at him, so at night, Vigo decides to take it out. His brother tries to stop him, but he keeps hitting it with a hoe, since he's angry that the dog gets to eat better food than them. The next day, the dog's body is found, while the butler finds the bloody plow that Vigo used to beat the dog. But he mentions that he forgot to take it home, so someone else must have used it. The butler notices that Vigo's brother's shirt has blood stains on it, so he asks him if he killed the dog, but Vigo kicks the butler, revealing that he was the one who did it. The woman notes that he must be punished for his actions, and when he returns home at night, his brother notices that his back has been lashed. Vigo burns down the noble's house to get revenge, and thinks that since he has taken everything from her, she's now a commoner just like him, but his brother becomes afraid of him and runs away. After that, Vigo spends all his time training, and when he becomes strong enough, he goes to the capital, where he begins challenging people bigger than him. They look down on him since he's skinny, but he easily defeats them, and they can't believe that they're no match for him. He eventually joins a party called the Silver Fang, and everyone's impressed by how strong he is, since he defeats all the monsters on his own. The captain asks Vigo why he doesn't work with anyone, so he explains that he doesn't want the fights to be easy, which makes the captain realize he's aiming to reach level 100. So he tells Vigo that a party isn't for people who want to increase their levels, and a cave dragon appears before them. The captain realizes that they've entered its territory, and he thinks it won't attack them unless they provoke it, but Vigo hits it with his knife, and leaves the captain to fight it alone. He ends up dying, so the party members make Vigo their new leader, but they eventually leave him since they don't agree with his methods, so he recruits new members and forms the Silver Wing. In the present, Vigo meets up with Joseph and the others, and he closes the blinds to make sure no one sees them, but Joseph mentions that he has nothing to be afraid of. Vigo tells him they've taken care of the restaurant Atelia was involved with, and he assures Hopper that nothing bad will happen to him, since they have the highest-ranked judge in the royal courthouse with them. The judge notes that their futures are secure, but Joseph plans to rule the whole kingdom from the shadows, and he thinks they should thank Dennis since he was the one who brought them together. Vin enters the room disguised as a waiter, and he mentions that the cook forgot to bring one of the dishes out, but they're surprised when it turns out to be just fried rice. But as Joseph takes a bite, he realizes that it's extremely delicious, and he tells Vin to bring out the cook, because he wants him to work in his kitchen. Vigo thinks about how despicable Joseph is, because he doesn't practice his magic at all, and he just dangles the power that he stole in front of others. He thinks all of them are trash, and he plans to eliminate them when the time comes, since it will make people think he saved the kingdom from such criminals. He believes it will lead him to becoming a noble, but he won't stop there, since he plans to take down the king and lead the kingdom and its neighboring countries as well. Joseph tells Vigo to taste the fried rice, and as he takes a bite, he realizes that it was cooked by Dennis, who suddenly enters the room, and he wants to punish them for burning his restaurant. Vigo asks him what his goal is, since he will get the death penalty if he hurts Joseph or the judge, but Dennis doesn't care about it. He notes that they've really made him angry, and as he screams, they get so scared that they fall to their knees, which confuses Vigo. Joseph offers to do anything for Dennis to let him go, so he tells Joseph to bring back Atelia's parents, as well as the books he burned down. He begs Dennis to ask for something he can actually do, so he tells Joseph to confess that he colluded with everyone else to burn down the restaurant, and the more he yells at them, the more they get scared. Vigo realizes that Dennis is using the dread voice, but Joseph can't take it anymore, so he admits that they were the ones behind the fire. His confession spreads around the city, since Vin used his magic megaphone to make everyone hear what's happening, and Vigo tries to attack them, but they manage to get away, and he's shocked to see that people are eating outside the building. Vigo wonders why every person connected to magic is present there, and they're all angry at what they just heard, while Dennis mentions that the wizard and mages carry out the law in the country, so they will be the ones to decide how to punish them, and Sestovich notes that it's over for them, since Joseph openly admitted to everything. Vigo becomes angry and attacks Dennis, saying he always knew Dennis would get in the way of his plan, and he realizes that just casting him out wasn't enough. Vigo enchants his sword with lightning, while Dennis freezes his knives, and they start clashing with each other. Vigo destroys the ground and throws rocks at Dennis, who blocks them with a huge pan, and he counters by shooting fire slashes towards Vigo. But he stops them with his sword and rushes towards Dennis, who barely manages to block his attack. We see that when Katie first introduced Dennis to Vigo, they immediately started to fight, because Vigo looks down on him since he's just a cook, but Katie convinces him to let Dennis join their party. They head to a dungeon, where everyone's impressed by Vigo, since he took down a powerful monster alone, and they're excited when Dennis starts preparing a meal for them. Vigo tells him to hurry up, and notes that they need to move further in, since he feels something even bigger in the dungeon. Dennis reminds him they've already finished their quest, but Vigo notes that his goal is to make the silver wing even bigger, and to do that, he can't afford to stand still for a single moment. Dennis calls him greedy, so he mentions that he worked hard to reach his current position, and he plans to keep achieving new heights, but Dennis doesn't understand the way he thinks. He asks Dennis why he wants to reach level 100, but before he can answer, he becomes distracted when his food starts to burn, and he serves it to everyone. He's glad to see that everyone including Vigo likes it, and Katie thanks him since their party has been doing well because of him, but Vigo still refuses to praise him. We see Vigo as he fires a party member, and Dennis gives him a meal before he leaves, since he can't do anything else for him. After that, Vigo apologizes to a noble for failing a job, but he wishes that one of them had died, since it would have made a great story. So Vigo becomes angry and prepares to attack the noble, but Dennis stops him. They head to a restaurant, where Vigo asks Dennis if he doesn't get angry at how the nobles look down on them, telling him they have the power to make them grovel at their feet. But Dennis just enjoys the meal, and tells Vigo that there are some things that they can't change. In the present, they continue to fight, and Vigo uses his destruction skill to break Dennis's knife, but he instantly repairs it. He knows that he could die if he gets hit, so he enhances his senses, and Vigo doesn't understand why Dennis is so passionate, since he never fought a fight he knew he would lose. He calls Dennis a naive boy who got lucky getting taken in, and he fires knives at Dennis while he rushes forward, but he dodges the attacks and creates huge pans to trap Vigo. But he cuts through them, and he attacks Dennis with his sword, but he blocks it with a broken pan. Vigo is disappointed that it's all he can do, and they continue clashing, while Vin and the others think that even though Vigo is strong, Dennis can still keep up with him, but Italia appears to be worried. Vigo sends Dennis flying, which makes him think about why he was trying to reach level 100, and he remembers the time when Jean told him he would never reach it, since he always does things half-heartedly. So he asks her what he needs to do to achieve it, but she mentions that he can never get to it if he doesn't find the answer on his own. He asks himself why he wanted to become a cook, and he realizes that he's been chasing the feeling he got from the fried rice that Jean served him the day she took him in. He wished to be the one who serves such delicious food, so that he can give strength to people who struggle in their lives, and make them smile after they eat his food. He's about to pass out, but he hears everyone calling his name, and he's disappointed by the look he put on their faces. Vigo covers his sword with lightning, and prepares to finish him off, but he recalls how Jean told him that the last piece to reach level 100 is buried within his heart. He finally understands what she means, and as he blocks Vigo's attack, his body starts to glow. Vigo gets blown away, and a light covers the area, as Dennis's friends wonder what's going on. He notes that just making delicious food isn't enough, since he also needs to become strong enough to protect the smiles of people close to him, so he's determined to become the strongest chef. Vigo doesn't understand what's going on, but Vin realizes that Dennis is leveling up, and Vigo tries to slash him, but Dennis dodges all of his attacks. He jumps up in the air and attacks Vigo, who tries to block him, but his feet are forced into the ground, while Dennis uses his new skill and tells him he's banned from his restaurant. A pillar of light sends Vigo crashing to the ground, and he can't believe he lost his position, thinking he can still win if he regains his footing, but he realizes that he can't even move a muscle. He has no idea what's happening to him, and Vin mentions that Dennis is using his unique skill, which he gained after reaching level 100. Vigo refuses to believe that it's where his story will end, so he keeps trying to get back up, but Dennis finishes using his skill, and we see that Vigo has been completely defeated. Dennis is about to collapse, but his friends catch him, and he asks them to make him some fried rice. Italia returns his bracelet, so he puts it on his arm, and thanks her for keeping it safe. After that, Katie goes to the Black's restaurant, where she tells Jean that she came to help Dennis if she felt he was in trouble, and Jean thinks she should have jumped in. But she mentions that it was the first time she saw Vigo fighting seriously, which made her realize that she would lose her life if she interfered at the wrong time. She wonders how Dennis was able to reach level 100, so Jean notes that he discovered the reason why he exists in this world. She mentions that it isn't about the techniques or skills that already exist, and explains that it's related to what a person can do that the world has never seen. Katie notes that she knew Jean was an unusual person, so she didn't expect a straightforward answer, but she doesn't understand what Jean is saying. She notes that it's a coincidence that two great chefs like her and Dennis were born in the same era, but they both took different paths. She mentions that she chose to become the greatest cook, while he decided to become the strongest chef so that he can protect the smiles of his friends. Katie thinks Dennis's level 100 skill doesn't suit a chef, so Jean tells her it's because he's an idiot, which makes them laugh. We see Heath having lunch, and he asks a girl named Fiorenza if she wants to eat as well, but she refuses his offer, telling him her job is to protect him. She mentions that Vigo and Joseph have been defeated, but he doesn't care about it, and once again offers her a bite of his sandwich. She thought everything Vigo did was a part of Heath's plan, but he notes that he would never depend on such a person, and he isn't worried that Vigo was defeated. She asks him if he thought Dennis wouldn't be able to beat Vigo, but he notes that he never doubted Dennis, since he's his little brother. Meanwhile, Vin and the others go to visit Dennis, who tells them to stop making so much noise since he's still recovering, but seeing him yell at them makes them realize he's feeling better. They show him a blueprint of the restaurant and reveal that Polvo hired workers from a construction company to rebuild it, which makes Dennis happy. He takes a look at the blueprints, and he realizes that the interior layout is different, so they mention they made a few changes. He's shocked to see that there's a huge bathhouse in the restaurant, but Italia tells him it won't be a problem, and he also notices a fish in the middle of the shop. So Henrietta notes that it was her idea, since she saw a huge fish tank in a high-class restaurant, and he can serve people fresh fish by catching it in front of them, but he has no plan to do that. He wonders why one of the walls is missing, so Vin explains that to make the restaurant look modern, its front wall will be made out of glass, but Dennis is against it as well. He realizes that they also planned a basement, so Rachel notes that he can let his employees stay there so that they can work all day, but he can't believe she's thinking of exploiting the workers. Vin visits Cynthia's grave, and he notes that everyone involved with Joseph is being captured, while the head of the Workstaff family's position is empty. But Italia has no intentions of taking that spot, and Sestovich and the others are thinking about what to do, while the researchers are trying to find a way to restore the burnt books. The restaurant has been rebuilt as well, and it's scheduled to be reopened, so everyone's taking a day off from their jobs to visit it. He recalls how Dennis taught him that when everyone thinks that things are over, there will be someone that rises up, and if no one can stand on their own, they will be able to get up if someone takes their hand. He wonders if he'll be able to fulfill his promise of becoming a powerful wizard, but he knows that he can only find out if he keeps moving forward. Meanwhile, Dennis goes to shop for the restaurant with Italia, and as they're coming back, she gets distracted by a bird and falls behind, but she's no longer afraid since everyone's so nice to her. Dennis puts up his sign, and he doesn't like it, but everyone else thinks it's perfect. Vin arrives as well, and Dennis asks him about the sign, so he mentions that he also likes it. Dennis tries telling them about the book he read, but they push him inside, and they're surprised to see that it's the same as before, which disappoints Italia since she wanted the big bath. Dennis tells her to give him a hand, and as he serves everyone their orders, he thanks them since they're the reason he was able to hold on to the things important to him. But that's where this video ends. Remember to like and subscribe to the channel. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you next time.